The spring sun hung high over Clearwater Valley, casting molten gold across the mirror surface of the lake. A brilliance so sharp it hurt to look at directly. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. Ethan Cole sat in his weathered wooden boat, the old planks warm under his thighs, a fishing line trailing slack into water, so impossibly clear he could count the pebbles on the rocky bottom 15 feet down. On the dock, his 9-year-old son Noah lay on his stomach, kicking his sneakered feet in the air, completely absorbed in a book about vintage airplanes, his lips moving silently as he read. The pine trees stood as solemn and timeless as cathedral walls, holding the valley in a sacred, silent embrace. Birds called back and forth in a language older than sorrow. In that moment, the world felt perfectly small and infinitely safe, a sanctuary carved from quiet and light. Then the sky tore open with a mechanical shriek that shattered the peace into a million jagged pieces. A sleek private jet, a silver needle against the blue, tilted at a sickening angle, its right engine a furious blossom of black smoke and orange flame. It spiraled downward, a dying bird, and hit the water 200 yards away, with a concussive boom that slammed into Ethan's chest. The lake erupted in a geyser of white water and shimmering, rainbow-sheen jet fuel. Ethan didn't think, he moved. His fishing rod clattered to the boat floor as he dove over the side. The cold water, a shock that sharpened every sense. He swam through the burning smell of fuel and chaos, his strokes powerful and desperate. Through the murky, bubbling cloud, he saw the cockpit nose down and sinking fast. A face, pale and terrified, was pressed against the shattered window. He yanked at the fractured plexiglass, ignoring the shards that bit into his palms, hooked his hands under the woman's arms, and pulled with every ounce of strength left in his soul. She came free in a tangle of cables and bubbles, her body limp. He broke the surface, dragging her onto the hull of his overturned boat as she coughed once, violently, water and fuel spewing from her lips, and then drew a ragged, miraculous breath. Her eyes, wide and shock blue, met his for a fleeting second before they fluttered closed. He didn't know she was Vivian Hale, he just knew she was alive. The next morning, Ethan stood in his small kitchen, the world outside deceptively serene, brewing coffee in a dented percolator that had belonged to his father. Sunlight filtered through the delicate lace curtains his late wife, Rebecca, had hung 6 years ago, casting delicate spiderweb shadows on the worn floorboards. The cabin smelled like pine sap and old paper, and the faint, lingering ghost of wood smoke. On the television in the corner, a news anchor was speaking, in urgent, reverent tones about a miraculous survival. The screen showed dizzying aerial footage of rescue boats circling, the dark stain of the crash site, divers in black wetsuits disappearing into the depths, Coast Guard helicopters hovering like anxious dragonflies. A bold banner at the bottom of the screen read, "Billionaire CEO survives jet crash." Ethan's finger stabbed the power button before the reporter could say the woman's name. A cold knot had formed in his stomach. He didn't need to know. Heroes in his grim experience didn't get happy endings. They got complications, reporters, lawyers, and ghosts stirred from their uneasy rest. He poured his coffee, black and strong, and looked out the window at the lake. It was calm again, a sheet of polished blue steel, as if yesterday's violence had been a collective nightmare, as if the jet hadn't carved a screaming, fiery scar across the pristine sky. 6 years ago, Ethan had been a senior aerospace engineer at Hale Dynamics, a rising star in a world of impossible machines. He'd worked on experimental aircraft systems so advanced they barely had names, just strings of letters and numbers that whispered of the future. He'd loved the work with a pure, fierce passion, loved the cold precision of it. The elegant way metal and math and motion came together in a symphony that defied gravity. But in the middle of that symphony, he'd heard a single, dissonant note no one else seemed to perceive. He'd found a flaw, a tiny, catastrophic vulnerability in a hydraulic control system that would fail under a very specific, rare cascade of stress conditions. He'd written detailed reports, sent meticulously documented emails, flagged it in project meetings with charts and simulations. His supervisor, a man with a polished smile and empty eyes, had clapped him on the shoulder and told him not to worry his talented head. The higher-ups were aware, and they would handle it. They didn't. 3 months later, during a high-altitude test flight over the Nevada desert, the system failed. The aircraft didn't just crash. It exploded mid-air in a silent, sun-bright flash visible from the ground. The test pilot survived with minor injuries, having ejected a heartbeat before the blast. But Ethan's wife, Rebecca, who had been visiting the remote observation tower that day with other families for a Bring Your Loved Ones to Work event, did not. The shockwave from the blast, traveling faster than sound, shattered the tower's reinforced west wall into a storm of glass and concrete. She'd been standing right there, holding their 3-year-old son Noah, pointing up at the speck in the sky that was her husband's masterpiece. Noah was shielded by her body, left with only a scar on his temple and a silence that lasted for a year. Rebecca was buried on a hill overlooking a different valley. The official inquiry, heavily influenced by Hale Dynamics' legal and public relations machinery, cited pilot error and unforeseen atmospheric phenomena. Ethan's warnings were buried deeper than his wife. Disgraced, broken, and burning with a guilt that no amount of truth could ever assuage, he took his son and vanished into the anonymity of Clearwater Valley, leaving the world of cutting-edge technology for one of simple rods, reels, and the deep forgiving silence of the mountains. He had pulled Vivian Hale, the architect of his ruin, the CEO whose name was on the reports that buried his, from the water. He had saved the woman whose company's negligence had killed his wife. The irony was a bitter metallic taste in his mouth, sharper than the lake water. He carried his coffee onto the porch, the wood warm under his bare feet. The valley was waking up. A hawk circled on a thermal high above. Down by the shore, Noah was skimming stones, each one hopping twice before sinking. The boy had asked no questions about yesterday, had simply hugged Ethan extra hard before bed. The world moved on, calm on the surface. But Ethan felt the undercurrents, deep and cold and pulling. He had stirred the past, and now it was coming for him. Not as a memory, but as a living, breathing woman currently recovering in a penthouse hospital suite downtown. He took a long sip of coffee, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the water met the sky. The scar there was invisible now, but he knew it was there, and so was hers. The complications had already begun. Thank you for reading this emotional journey. For more stories that explore the profound complexities of human kindness, resilience, and the unexpected ties that bind us, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Your support helps us share more heartfelt narratives